39 states, 3 wars, 7 years. One empire, proclaimed in the enemy's own palace. Professor Bulu is at the desk tonight. Nobody reads 19th century diplomatic paper closer, and this story was written on that paper. There's one sheet of it the school books get wrong. Before this episode ends, you'll see the actual pen strokes that started a war.
So set the scene with me. The 18th of January, 1871. The Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, Louis XIV's own palace, packed wall to wall with German princes and uniforms, proclaiming a German empire on French soil. This painting is that room. Wilhelm of Prussia up on the dais. The princes with their swords in the air. And dead center, in gleaming white, Bismarck.
While outside those windows, Paris is starving under German siege. The war isn't even over.
That painting is also lying to you. Bismarck wore dark blue that day. Werner promoted him to white cuirassier dress 14 years later as a birthday gift for the old man. The version Germany remembers is the retouched one.
Fits the version everyone learned in school, doesn't it? A king sneers at a gutter crown. A chancellor promises blood and iron, forges a telegram, steals an empire. Clean story, great villain.
Careful. Every beat of that clean story is bent, and one of them gets unbent today with the original paperwork. My read is the true machine is more interesting than the villain. Am I close, Professor?
Closer than most textbooks. I'll speak only for the paper trail, and the paper shows preparation plus opportunism. A man who kept 3 doors open and walked through whichever one events unlocked. Improvisation, not prophecy, as far as the documents can carry us.
The question I keep circling in tonight's stack is the one that actually matters. What did Bismarck actually do that nobody before him could? Germans had wanted this for decades. He got it in 7 years.
And the honest answer starts before him, with the people who tried and failed. The failure is the instruction manual.
Let's start where the manual starts. 1848, a parliament, a crown on offer, and a number that never gets its own chapter. 290. Before we keep going, one small favor that actually moves the needle. If this is landing for you, tap like, then subscribe and turn on the bell so you do not miss the rest. 2 taps, completely free, and it pushes this in front of more people who need it. Erica, you've read the records of that first attempt. The Frankfurt Parliament. 290 what exactly?
290 votes, March 1849. An elected German parliament offers Prussia's king an imperial crown.
Revolution year. Barricades across Europe, and Germany's answer is a parliament in a church.
The Paulskirche in Frankfurt. This room. Lawyers and professors drafting a constitution for a country that didn't exist. The vote wasn't even close. 294, 248 against.
Abstentions. 248 sat silent, not against.
You're right, abstentions. So, 290 yes, 248 sitting on their hands, a crown from barely half the room.
The king says no to a crown. Kings don't do that.
This king did. Too deeply conservative to take an imperial crown from any hands but other princes.
The gutter line, though, everyone quotes the sneer.
That exact phrase is tradition, how history remembers his contempt. The documented version is a private letter dripping scorn at a revolution-made crown.
Someone in the studio chat just typed the thing I was circling. If the revolution already offered Germany a crown, why did it fail?
A parliament can write a constitution, it turns out. What it can't do is make a king kneel to voters, and this particular king would rather keep his crown small than take a larger one from below. And the part that worries me, reading it now. The lesson the next generation took wasn't try again.
It was ballots can't do this, something else can.
Meanwhile, Prussia had been building the boring version for years. The toll thing, the customs, the
Zollverein. One market, Prussian rules. 1834. A customs union run from Berlin. Pause here and really look at that line. Austria is outside it. Year by year, it made Prussia indispensable.
Paperwork. A tax union isn't power.
It made Prussia indispensable. In the end, every German state but Austria and 2 port cities traded inside a Prussian system. The economic Germany existed before the political one.
Fine. Profitable paperwork.
Plus railways, a general staff, and that rifle. I mean, the rifle plus everything feeding it.
The needle gun, breech loader. Fire flat on your belly while the other side stands up to reload.
So the tools are stacked and waiting, ready for a purpose nobody has authorized yet. What's missing is a hand reckless enough to pick them up.
Ballots asked, rails and rifles answered.
That was the lesson.
Okay, different animal entirely. Bismarck himself. Professor Beaulieu's still with us for this one because from here on the story runs on his kind of paperwork.
September 1862. That's where the machine finally gets a driver.
The chat's already ahead of me though. Someone just asked, word for word, why would a king nearly give up his throne over an army budget?
Grain of salt on the drama, because the juiciest details come from memoirs. But the shape is documented. September 1862. Parliament refuses the army money. King William is somewhere in his mid-60s and worn out. By the record, genuinely ready to abdicate.
Hang on. Ready to quit? Over a budget line?
Ready to quit. The man talked in to stop him. An ambassador his own court calls a dangerous gambler. Otto von Bismarck.
The part that checks out cleanly. The appointment is real, September 62 mid-crisis. He's hired to run a government against its own parliament.
Which tells you what he was hired to be, not a healer, a crowbar. Within a week he's in front of the budget committee. This face, 20 years younger, telling the room the great questions of the time are not decided by speeches and majority resolutions. That was the mistake of 1848. They are decided by iron and blood.
Iron first. Check the transcript order.
Posterity flipped it to blood and iron, most likely because it simply sounded better. There was an older patriotic poem with that ring. The committee record says iron and blood though. Volume 10 of the collected works, page 139 I believe. Check the number, the sentence is not in doubt. Industry first, then war. He meant the order.
Budget or no budget, he simply kept collecting the taxes and building the R.
Unapproved spending, at royal scale. The eyebrow raises itself.
Raise it, and note the ledger. 4 years of unapproved budgets bought the army he was about to spend. Then he went shopping for a war. Denmark, 1864. The way this war works is, forget the battlefield, watch the paperwork. Prussia invades in February, and on purpose, Austria invades with her.
Watch the dates draw. They cross into Schleswig on the 1st of February. By the 18th of April, the Danish stronghold at Diebel falls after a 2-week siege. By the end of October, a treaty in Vienna hands the two duchies, Schleswig and Holstein, to Prussia and Austria, jointly.
Jointly, so the prize is a shared driveway. 2 proud houses, 1 strip of pavement, and every snow shovel is a treaty violation. That's not a prize, that's a fight on layaway.
The condominium over the duchies was precisely the point. 9 times out of 10, a joint possession like that ends in a quarrel, and this one was designed to. Berlin could reach for it whenever it wanted. You can read the next 2 years as Bismarck adjusting the temperature on that quarrel.
Run it as an exchange rate. 9 months of war buys 2 duchies. Terrible rate. Unless the duchies aren't the product. Put a pin in this number. France ends up paying for all of this, to the franc. The bill lands at the end of this video.
Let's call the setup what it is. Prussia rearmed, the parliament bypassed, and Austria co-owning a prize Bismarck can quarrel over on demand. When that quarrel comes, in the summer of 1866, it comes on his terms.
"7 weeks. That's the whole war. Bismarck picks the quarrel over the duchies, and Austria takes the bait. The German Confederation, the club both belong to, tears itself in half.
And it comes down to one day, the 3rd of July, 1866. A Bohemian village called Sadowa, under the fortress of Konigratz. 2 of the largest armies Europe had ever concentrated walk into the same shallow valley.
Stop. The numbers are my lane. About 240,000 Austrians on that front. Some 285,000 Prussians. 500,000 men, 1 valley, 1 day. By dark, Austria has lost around 45,000 men, nearly half of them prisoners. Prussia under 10,000. That ratio isn't courage. Erica, tell them what it actually is.
It's the boring decade cashing out. This painting catches it, the Prussian staff calm on the ridge while the field burns. Prussian infantry fired breech-loading needle guns lying down. Austrian lines stood up with muzzle loaders and bayonets.
For the first time in a European war, one side rode to its battlefield by rail. Half the victory arrived on a timetable.
The 1834 customs map just became the political map.
Exchange rate update. 7 weeks of war buys Prussia the whole north of Germany. The rate is improving.
At this pace, his third war should pay out in an afternoon.
Noted, both of you. The ledger stays open. Plainly though, 7 weeks, start to armistice. That fact carries the next 50 years. Now the strangest part. Prussia annexes Hanover, Hesse-Kassel, Nassau, Frankfurt. Fellow German states, swallowed whole. And from Austria, the loser, the power that started the century-running Germany, not 1 acre.
Why leave the loser intact? Simple. A humiliated Austria is a permanent enemy. An intact one is a future customer.
The punishment wasn't land then, it was the exit. Austria is out of Germany forever.
Out, and everything north of the Main River reorganizes into the North German Confederation in '67. Berlin's capital, Prussia's king presiding, and a constitution that becomes the empire's 4 years later. The dress rehearsal is over.
South of the Main, 4 states are still outside: Bavaria, Württemberg, Baden, Hesse-Darmstadt, Etimole des Heeres. Thus is one more war, and one piece of paper. 4 holdouts. Erica, the third arrow, you have read the actual dispatch behind it. Why on earth does France declare war on Prussia?
Watch the map draw itself, because the shape explains the trap. 3 arrows out of Berlin. Arrow 1, 1864, north into Denmark. Arrow 2, 1866, south against Austria, 7 weeks. Arrow 3 points at France and it carries a question mark. Because Bismarck can't draw this one himself. The South German states will only fight beside Prussia if France is the aggressor. He needs Paris to declare first.
A question mark. Doing that much work. Walk the chain back for me.
So follow the chain. Spain's throne sits empty. A Hohenzollern prince, a relative of Prussia's king, gets floated for it. France explodes at the idea of Hohenzollerns on 2 borders, and the candidacy is withdrawn on the 12th of July. That's a French win, but Paris overreaches. The next day, the French ambassador Benedetti corners King William at the spa town of Ems and demands a promise. Never again, for all time. The king politely declines, ends the conversation, and has a summary wired to Berlin. And that evening, Bismarck sits down with Abeken's telegram and starts EDI.
Forging. He rewrote the king's words into an insult.
He didn't write one word. He struck words out, and that's the whole trick. It's nastier than forgery, because every remaining word is genuinely the king's. Don't take my word for it. Liam, his own memoirs are on the desk. Read the line out loud.
Quoting Bismarck on Bismarck, he reduced the telegram by striking out words, but without adding or altering his words. The insult was made of scissors. This is the sheet of paper I promised you at the top. The dispatch as Berlin received it on the 13th of July, 1870. Look at the right-hand column. The strike marks go right through the lines.
Now the version Berlin released that same evening. A third fewer words. The courtesies are gone, the open door is gone. What's left reads like a king and an ambassador showing each other the door.
Make it human. Benedetti, the ambassador. What does he actually read the next morning?
A press version of his own conversation in which the king appears to dismiss him flat. No courtesies, no continuation. And Paris reads the same text as Prussia snubbing France before all of Europe.
Didn't he write the insult in any way then, just with scissors?
No, he cut the courtesy out. The absence is the insult. Paris supplies the anger all by itself. My orchid problem, honestly, endless reading, wrong watering. France read every word of that telegram and never asked what had been cut.
Clever. I mean, clever the way a trap is clever. The victim provides the force.
It works. 6 days. France declares war on the 19th of July, on the strength of a press release.
The 19th of July. France declaring first settles everything else. Bavaria, Württemberg, Baden read France as the aggressor, so the South marches with Prussia. The 4th arrow draws itself, and this man has declared war on the wrong machine. Germany puts 380,000 men on the frontier in 18 days. Call it 21,000 a day, every day, for 2.5 weeks.
Paper starts the war then. Where it starts on the ground is stranger, and this series knows the place.
Where do the armies actually collide first then? Metz? Strasbourg?
Neither. The first fight of the Franco-Prussian War lands on a coal town almost nobody guesses. It lands on Saarbrücken, a coal town on the river Saar, right on the border. Professor, still with us at the desk? You've read the French Corps orders. 30,000 men walk into one town on the 2nd of August and then just stop. Why?
It was never a military objective. It was a headline. Paris needed a victory in print, fast. Frossard's 2nd Corps pushes a single Prussian regiment off the heights, holds the high ground, and waits. As a battle, it barely registers. As theater, it ran on every front page in France.
Here's the ground itself. Saarbrücken sits right on the border, and the Spicheren Heights rise just south of it, on the French side. One valley. Keep your eye on it, because this series will keep coming back here.
The Emperor treats it as theater too. He brings his son to watch. Louis, 14. The telegram home, as the period press carried it. Baptism of fire received. Admirably cool. He keeps a spent bullet for a souvenir.
14. He's a kid on a souvenir hunt at a battle.
5 weeks later, the father's a prisoner and the dynasty's finished. Hold both pictures side by side.
And a detail almost everyone misses. The men defending this stretch of border aren't all Prussians. The eastern Saar towns march as Bavar.
Wait, whose army? I thought this was Prussia's war.
Bavaria's, in this corner. The Congress of Vienna split the Saar in 1815. Most went to Prussia's Rhine province. But the eastern slice, the Saarpfalz, went to the Kingdom of Bavaria. Those men are here because France declared first, and the South honored its treaties.
Bismarck's telegram edit, paying out in infantry. The alliance case he built on paper in July is standing on these heights in August.
Then the real war arrives. The 6th of August, German columns storm these wooded heights, and this painting shows the climb. In one afternoon at Spicheren, 4,871 German casualties, 4,078 French.
You're right, Saarbrücken barely counts. A headline, a handful of casualties. Then answer the real question. Why do 9,000 men fall on these same hills 4 days later?
By then, both armies are feeling for each other along this river, and whoever holds these heights holds the door into France. Same day, further east, another French army loses at Worth. The war swings west and never comes back. The Saar's whole war lasted 5 days.
The way this valley pays for the war is, forget the battles, coal, iron. 3 years after unification, a steelworks goes up at Völklingen on this river. By the 1910s, it's Germany's biggest maker of steel beams.
With Alsace-Lorraine's iron ore suddenly next door, this valley, Lorraine, and Luxembourg fuse into one industrial heartland inside the new Reich. The border war becomes an arsenal. The dispatches I can read you line by line. What those pits felt like underground is a different kind of source. The same coal field a later treaty hands to France, but that's a story this series has already told.
As for the French army that stood here, it falls back west and backs into the fortress of Metz. And the door shuts behind it.
Professor Boulieu, thank you. Sharpest thing said at this desk tonight is yours. Improvisation, not prophecy. We'll carry it home from here.
Anytime. Watch the last documents closely.
The door. That word is about to cost France an emperor because the army that marches to reopen Metz walks into a town called Sedan.
"103,000 prisoners. That's one battle, at a river town called Sedan. That's the door failing to reopen."
The army sent to relieve Metz gets herded into a loop of the Meuse River at Sedan, and the first 2 days of September close the trap. 120,000 French soldiers inside, more than 200,000 Germans on the hills around them, and the artillery does the arguing. When it's over, 3,000 French dead and 14,000 wounded. 103,000 men marched into captivity, the Emperor of the French among them. The guns decided it. German batteries on the heights outranged everything the French could ensaim.
The French had the better rifle. The CISSP outranged the needle gun.
True, and it didn't save them. Rifles win firefights, Krupp steel, and an 18-day mobilization win campaigns. More than 400 German guns ringed Sedan, and the infantry never needed to close.
Conceded. Guns beat rifles.
This is the field, painted by Camphausen. Napoleon III, seriously ill, his cheeks rouged to hide it, takes a carriage to the Prussian king and surrenders himself and the army. An emperor captured on the field.
I keep wanting to nurse that dynasty back like one of my balcony succulents, and I know exactly how that graveyard ends. The Piapiazapirams are done at Sedan. Paris knows it in 48 hours.
Done how fast? Give the timeline.
The 4th of September. A republic is proclaimed in Paris, and the war keeps going without the emperor. By the 19th, German armies close the ring around the capital itself. The war settles into a long and cold waiting game. The new government's fighting men get out however they can. Gambetta leaves the besieged city by
The last train south?
balloon over the Prussian lines to raise fresh armies from the countryside. This man floating out of a surrounded capital to keep a war alive.
It half works. The countryside armies fight on. Then October, Bazaine surrenders Metz, 140,000 men intact. The siege grinds on into winter.
Back to the room from our cold open then. Catch the date because the empire is proclaimed on the 18th of January. Paris doesn't even surrender until the 28th. The new Germany is born 10 days before the war's main siege ends.
And they picked that date with tweezers. The 18th of January, the anniversary of
Napoleon's coronation.
Prussia's. Frederick crowned himself king in Prussia on that day in 1701. Exactly 170 years. Wrong empire, right instinct. Hold on, one more naming itch while we're in the room. Why is the title German Emperor? Why not Emperor of Germany?
Because the princes counted the words. Emperor of Germany implies he owns the place. Wilhelm wanted that title, and the princes wouldn't sell it.
Anyway, the room got its emperor either way. 25 states, one crown, whatever the plate on the door says.
Even the title fight was one more shared driveway, to borrow Liam's word. 25 governments co-owning a single crown by treaty. Not one of them voted for it.
When does the war actually end, though?
Which ending do you want, the shooting or the signatures? Different dates, different meanings.
The signatures.
Armistice on the 28th of January, the day Paris opens its gates. The full treaty comes in May in Frankfurt. And that treaty is where this episode has been heading all along.
The bill arrives with two numbers on it. 5,000 square miles, 5 billion francs.
Okay, 5 billion francs. You've sat with that bill all week. How heavy is it really?
Heavy enough that an occupation army sat on French soil until it cleared. The boots were the interest.
Half of that bill is the Treaty of Frankfurt, signed the 10th of May, 1871. The other half is land, and the land is the half that never heals. Germany annexes Alsace and half of Lorraine with the fortress city of Metz. About 5,000 square miles of France, gone.
I printed this exact map and I've been flipping back to it all week. Look at the bottom left corner. The whole empire in color, and that one red patch labeled Reichsland. Not a kingdom, not a duchy, a possession.
Now the fight historians still have. Was taking it smart? Answer this first. Who had invaded whom? Twice, inside a century. The soldiers wanted a defensible frontier. A glacis, Metz as the lock. Pure security logic. It holds.
Think of it like an emergency room, because that's honestly how the generals argued. Triage. The bleeding artery is the open Rhine frontier. Metz is the pressure bandage. You clamp the emergency first and let the feelings wait in the waiting room.
Okay, but triage assumes the patient eventually leaves the hospital. What happens when the waiting room never empties? The bandage logic breaks right there, though. Triage ends when the emergency ends. This clamp stayed on for 43 years, and the patient across the border never checked out.
Said plainly then, the annexation bought Germany a stronger border and a permanent enemy in the same signature. Metz had always sat on the French side of the language line. Britannica's own summary calls what followed an extremely unstable peace.
Bismarck himself, though, did he want it?
Both things are true, and that's the honest verdict. The army and German public opinion drove the annexation, the king sided with the soldiers, and historians still argue how hard Bismarck pushed back. The security was real. So was the wound. Unsettled.
Now the bill I pinned back when he was buying wars. 5 billion francs, occupation until paid. France clears it by September 1873, almost 2 years early, and the boots march home that same month. The worth it number to France was getting them off her soil.
Which stunned Berlin, frankly. The money healed. The map didn't.
Right. And the famous French line about the lost provinces, always think of it, never speak of it. Is that one real?
Compressed by tradition, like the gutter crown. What Gambetta actually said at St. Quentin in November 1871. Never speak of the foreigner, but let it be clear that we always think of him. Aimed at Germany, sharpened into a slogan later, and calibrated honestly. France did not spend 43 years spoiling for revenge. Scholars of the region are blunt. By 1914, most of the nearly 2 million people living in Alsace-Lorraine had resigned themselves to German rule, and France didn't go to war in 1914 specifically to win it back. The wound was an ache, not a countdown.
An ache both armies planned around anyway. That's the poison doing its work.
And file one image away. The empire born in the Hall of Mirrors will be buried by a treaty signed in the very same room. We have already told that story on this channel.
Final exchange rate for the ledger. 3 wars, 1 telegram, 1 empire.
Plus one very awkward room.
Ledger's closed. Kai, retire it.
Yeah, so if you retell 2 things from tonight, make them the corrections. He cut words out of that telegram, he never added one. And the order is iron and blood, industry before war. You'll now know the record better than most textbooks, so send this one to the friend who still says forged.
If today leaves you a single image, make it the pen. A war can start with strike marks, and a map signed in a Hall of Mirrors does not stay signed.
Next time the problem flips. The new empire has to keep France friendless forever, and that scramble of secret treaties is where the road to 1914 really gets paved.
Right, if this arc is finally untangling how the First World War got loaded, a like and a subscribe genuinely steer what we build next, and part 3 is already on the desk. We couldn't settle this one, so it's yours now. Was taking Metz smart security or the mistake that doomed the empire? Argue it in the comments. That was the 7 years. Thanks for watching, thanks for walking them with us, and go easy on your houseplants tonight.